Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Paul Smith. I will be moderating today's discussion amongst our panelists. It is 1:30 here in the East. I see on the ticker that we have more folks coming on board, so please give us an additional 30 seconds or so for them to join in, and then we will get underway with some introductions and our quarterly webinar. So please hang in there for another 30 seconds or so. Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Paul Smith. We're going to give it another, just maybe 30 seconds. I see the ticker continuing to move up with attendees, so please just give us a bit more, and then we will get underway with today's webinar. Okay, so I'm showing 1:31. That's my normal routine. For those of you that are repeat attendees, I normally get started now. So let's start off with a thank you for your time this afternoon. We appreciate your spending time with Burns & Wilcox to chat with you about the property and casualty market outlook for Q2 2024. Let me introduce some of my colleagues that I have the great opportunity to kind of chair this discussion with today. On the call is Doug Legters. He's the Regional Vice President of the Northeast for Burns & Wilcox, and he's based out of our New Jersey office. Bonnie Steen, Vice President and Managing Director, Burns & Wilcox, New Orleans. But Bonnie also looks after all of Louisiana, where we have an office now in the northern part of the state, as well as the state of Arkansas. So welcome, Bonnie. And last but not least, Kate Wright, Associate Vice President, Regional Practice Group Leader. And Kate's going to chat with us today about personal lines insurance, which of course I think everyone knows is a real pillar within the Burns & Wilcox organization. So without further ado, we'll kind of get underway. One housekeeping item: if you do have questions throughout the webinar, please ask your question in the box that should be on the right-hand side of your screen. We will do our best to get to the question during the webinar. If for some reason we cannot, you can rest assured that myself, one of my panelists here that will be speaking today, or someone else from Burns & Wilcox will get back to you with an answer. So please put your questions in there and we will do our best. So in normal fashion, let's just kind of jump into things here. I think as our viewers know, we've been conducting these webinars on the first Thursday of each new quarter. And we're in a cadence now that seems to make good sense. We're fresh off of a quarter, we're into a new one, and Thursdays at 1:30 Eastern seem to work really well. So we're going to continue in that vein. So I think folks should mark their calendars for the balance of the year as well, where we'll be talking about different things. So let me get right into things here. My first question will be for you, Bonnie. As we begin Q2, I have no doubt that many of today's participants are anxious to hear about projections relating to the 2024 Atlantic hurricane season. As an industry veteran who knows the topic and the targeted geography based on my introduction, of course, with where you physically sit, can you share with the audience what you're hearing regarding named storms and what you think wind season is going to look like relative to commercial lines insurance in Q2?
Thank you very much, Paul, for the question. So predictions for the 2024 Atlantic hurricane season. I think, first of all, we should talk about what actually is the hurricane season. It runs from June 1st through November 30th of every year. Being from the New Orleans area and living close to the Gulf Coast, the hurricane season is always on our radar here in the New Orleans office. So there's several major resources out there have made predictions about the upcoming season. And it looks like the number is between 20 and 24 named storms is what is expected for this upcoming season. And of the 20 to 24 named storms, it's predicted that 9 to 12 are going to actually become a hurricane. And of that, 4 to 8 will become a Cat 3 hurricane or stronger. A Cat 3 hurricane is classified as one that has winds from 111 miles an hour to 129 miles an hour. And certainly winds this strong will cause devastating damage and power outage. One thing we have to look at is the water temperatures out in the Atlantic. 75% of all storms do form in the Atlantic Ocean. So let's look at the recent water temperatures that have been reported from the Atlantic Ocean. Also, we have some data that shows for every degree of Fahrenheit above average water temperature, the chance of a storm development in the Gulf increases by 10%. The average water temperature in the Gulf is around 81 degrees, and these temperatures are already showing up 5, 6, 7 degrees above average. So the temperatures are already warmer than usual, and we're not even into May yet, let alone June, which starts the hurricane season. Another major factor you have to look at with hurricanes is the upper air currents. So you got to look at the shear that gets projected over the Gulf. So if you have a strong jet stream over the Gulf, that would possibly shear off a developing storm to limit its potential growth and strength. So unfortunately, a La Niña is being predicted for this summer. A La Niña means weak upper air currents. So thus storms are going to be allowed to build up more. So having warm water temperatures that are already above average and having a La Niña year means we could be in for a rough hurricane season. Last year, as comparison, we had 20 named storms, and fortunately only one hit U.S. land in the Florida area on the Big Bend side, on the Gulf side. And that storm had 115-mile-an-hour winds at landfall. And last year was an El Nino year, meaning that they did have strong winds in the atmosphere, pushing these currents from west to east, shearing off the tops of the storms to prevent them from forming and becoming stronger. So, Paul, that's what I have for the upcoming 2024 hurricane season.
Well, that sounded a little bit like a science class, Bonnie. Thank you for that. I really do appreciate that. And hey, I guess it really underscores the important role that we play here in the E&S sector and our ability to help our clients in what with La Nina is going to be, could certainly be a very, very active season, and perhaps a whole lot different than it was last year, where we, I think we're quite lucky with respect to having just the one storm and actually where it landed as well within the state of Florida. Hey, Kate, I'm going to switch to you now at this point. Similar question, but really with more of a focus on personal lines insurance. How do you see the storm season impacting that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Paul. Well, as Bonnie has alluded to, it can be a very difficult process to predict the upcoming hurricane season, as well as potentially how the market will respond if we have some of the major hurricanes make landfall that they are expecting. But the one thing that we do know is that we know for sure that profitability remains a top priority for our personal insurance carriers. And if we have an active hurricane season as they are predicting, it's certainly going to impact the carrier's underwriting profits. Over the last couple of years in this hard market, we've seen record rate increases. We've seen carriers tighten up their underwriting appetites, and we've seen them improve their technology and how they model for coastal exposures. Therefore, many carriers with the underwriting coastal capacity and the underwriting discipline over the last year or so were able to generate a profit last year, especially because we had a quiet hurricane season in 2023. Yet, 1 year of profitable results really are not going to be enough to help close this gap, this deficit, large deficit in underwriting losses that the industry has experienced over the years. So what we anticipate are carriers aiming for long-term sustainability in this marketplace to cautiously continue to write business as we go into Q2 while closely managing their underwriting portfolio to continue to achieve profitable results. But this could all really change very quickly just depending on what we experience with the hurricane forecast.
Yeah, for sure. It certainly sounds though as if we're relying certainly much more so today than even a year ago on data and technology to assist in the underwriting process. Again, I think a great opportunity to lean into some of the great technology and data that we have here within Burns & Wilcox to assist our personal lines clients. Thanks for that, Kate, much appreciated. Doug, next on the list here, changing direction a bit, what do you anticipate as far as market conditions impacting the various commercial lines of insurance outside of property, which I think we've talked about here, and the personal line stuff that Kate spoke to? So what do you anticipate with respect to conditions impacting the other commercial lines of insurance?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Paul. I appreciate the question. You know, I was thinking about this. I think this is my 30th year in the industry. Gotta say, there's never been a dull day, and commercial lines certainly contributes to that. So I think there's going to be, you know, lots of opportunity. You know, here in the Northeast, our commercial lines team grew roughly 20% in 2023. We're trending, you know, 25% or better for the first quarter of 2024. So very excited about that. You know, as Kate and Bonnie alluded to on the property side, there are no shortage of opportunities. You know, not easy. There are challenges, but the challenges are, you know, what enables us to be able to provide the solutions for our clients that we do, right? So, you know, where we've seen some, you know, stabilization, some, you know, relaxing of, you know, market conditions and rates, we're also seeing that carriers are reporting adverse loss trends for some recent years, and that you know, we're still seeing rates firming. And, you know, even loss-free renewals are coming in with 5 to 10% increases. So I think, you know, it's just, you know, it's good. And as Kate mentioned, you know, profitability is key to our market partners, and it's our job to help them, you know, deliver on those profitable results. So we can't keep providing solutions for our clients if we don't have the markets to support us there. So
yeah, for sure. I think, you know, just a couple of weeks ago, Doug, you and I had the privilege of attending a conference in New York City where we chatted a bit about some of the commercial liability lines of business. And I think the term that was used was false positive with respect to results in some of those years because of, you know, litigation and courts and so forth, perhaps not being as active as they would be otherwise. We actually are planning to talk about that in our written piece, which again, I hope everyone on today's call has the opportunity to see that. That will be published in all likelihood next week. So we're looking forward to that. There's some other lines of business though, you know, I wanted to maybe chat a little bit more about in there, Doug. Can you maybe dig into particular lines of business or coverages that you think are going to be impacted?
Absolutely. I think, you know, it's not exclusive to the Northeast here. You know, particularly, you know, we're keeping our eyes on liquor liability, A&B, or assault and battery, if you will. You know, ITVs are coming into play, crime scores, you know, even animal liability limits and sublimits and things like that. So, you know, we're finding that, you know, liquor liability in particular, you know, that can be different state by state, you know, different venues. And if you think about it here, just in the Northeast, there are a lot of establishments that sell, distribute, you know, serve liquor. And it's getting harder and harder to place that coverage. And even when you can find it, we're finding now that there are sublimits or exclusions altogether. And, you know, liquor liability typically covered A and B. Now we're seeing A and B exclusions on the liquor, or we're seeing sublimits, and you know that can create some serious gaps in coverage. And so, you know, fortunately, you know, our guys, you know, have our binding markets that they can go to. We have our brokerage markets we can go to, so we're able to, you know, really piece together programs that protect our clients, and that's key. And so, you know, that's one area that we're hitting, you know, very carefully.
Okay, terrific. Thanks, Doug. Appreciate that. I think you nailed it. Liquor is not a problem only in the Northeast, candidly. I think it's throughout the entire country. For folks on the call, A and B, us insurance nerds have a lot of acronyms that we use. That's assault and battery for anyone that didn't know what A and B is. So thanks for that, Doug. Really appreciate it. Hey, Bonnie, I'm going to go back to you. And, you know, this is a question that I think is certainly looming in my mind. And I've read some articles recently. We're in a bit of a prolonged, whether you want to use the word hard property market or firm property market, pick whatever word you like. But we're in a prolonged, you know, kind of market cycle right now within the property area for both commercial and personal accounts. If that begins to change and become more competitive, which again, depending on the hurricane season that's upcoming here and some other factors, do you anticipate any of the underlying underwriting integrity that's been brought into the marketplace over the last 3, 4, or 5 years? Do you anticipate some of that waning or perhaps zeroing out, becoming less, you know, kind of less of an application?
Underwriting integrity, the hard market. So some people think we've been in a hard market 4 years, 5 years. Even others think we've been in a hard market possibly 6 years. I think underwriting integrity is here to stay. After having 5, 6 years of the market we've been in, certainly I think that it should be here to stay. You know, Burns and Wilcox, we pride ourselves in being, you know, underwriting offices on the contract buying side. When we enter those types of risks in different portals and underwrite them, you know, we're seeing some flat prices and maybe even small cracks in the market. And I think that sometimes we'll see a little bit better pricing on a new account versus a renewal account. But I really don't see the markets backing off of underwriting integrity. I think it's going to be required to keep and retain and maintain your aggregate to be able to write in your domestic markets. I do think that it will continue. And as Kate mentioned, you know, profit over growth is still very important. That is driving everything going on in the property segment. For example, things such as COPE, your roofing updates. We see a lot of submissions coming in and retail agents aren't updating the roofing information. We know they've had a new roof because there could be a loss in the file showing that we did pay for a new roof. And it's really paramount that these applications get updated for roofs, electrical, to plumbing, heating. The more information you can give us on a risk, the better quote we'll be able to put out. You know, we've had wildfires, we've had hailstorms, the convective storms. Underwriting integrity is here to stay. Insurance to value is another part of it. A lot of our markets have been pushing values up 3, 4, 5, 10% every year over the past several years. I think the markets will continue to focus on insurance to value. Most of our E&S paper does not have an inflation guard built in. So we need to make sure that our values are keeping up with inflation. Property inspections are going to continue to be required. And with the property inspection, we're validating what the retail agent gives us on the application. And it's a requirement with our contracts that we order these inspections. You know, at the end of the day, the value of the building is up to the retail agent and the insured. But we do need to be running some checks in the background to make sure we're not too far off on insurance to value. You know, I think terms and conditions won't get any worse. We might even see some improvement. But again, we don't want to fall back into those old soft market habits and turn right around and go into another extremely hard market for a very long time. You know, by having underwriting integrity, it gives us access to many markets, you know, including the Tane, which is an A9 rated company, Kaufman company that we're able to write a significant amount of business in, along with our other domestic partners and Lloyd's syndicates that we write business with. So that's kind of what I have on underwriting integrity. The short answer is yes, I think it's here to stay. Thank you, Paul.
Here, and you know, as a professional of the industry as you are, and I would imagine everyone on today's call, that should be music to their ears as well, right? It's all about the profitability. Kate or Doug, in that order, do you have anything to add to what Bonnie already said there regarding this prolonged market cycle we're in?
Yeah, well, I think Bonnie did a great job covering it, and I would have to agree. All carriers are still very hard pressed to generate some underwriting profits, and insurance to value and underwriting integrity is a big piece of that in order to be successful. And we also know that the ability for carriers to secure additional capacity and then deploy that capacity to their partners is highly contingent upon quality underwriting and profitable results. So they all go hand in hand. And I think that it's here to stay. So if you're not doing it and you're not upholding that, then you're behind the 8 ball in terms of that philosophy.
Agree. Doug, anything?
Yeah, I agree. I think Bonnie and now Kate have nailed it. Paul, you touched on, technology earlier. I think technology is going to play a big part in being able to keep track of, the properties, the results, and find out additional information that may or may not come through an application. So I agree. Underwriting integrity is going to be huge in the E&S space where we've got freedom of form. I think creating these products, will and the capacity that Kate mentioned will be much more prevalent if we're returning profitable results.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's really the obligation of all of us is to do that, because without profitable insurance companies that on the other side accepting the risk, it would really bring the economy to a halt. So it's very, very important that we have profitable carrier partners. And of course, those are the only ones that we work with, are ones that are A- or better rated within AM Best. Doug, I'm going to stick with you for a moment, if you don't mind,
Sure.
and kind of change the direction of the conversation. And if you could just comment a bit on what I'm going to very broadly categorize as professional liability. Can you just give us an update on what's happening in that marketplace?
Yeah, sure. I caveat this with I'm married to a career professional broker and underwriter, so she grades me pretty hard. So we'll see what happens later today. But in any case, here at Burns and Wilcox, we're looking at a lot of management liability, architects and engineers, things along those lines. Bit of a softer marketplace, I'd say, in the professional space. There's a lot of capacity out there. We've seen a lot of entrants from insurtechs and MGAs and MGUs getting more and more into the professional space. A good broker friend of mine said to me the other day, just kind of hopes to get through 2024 and maybe he'll make money again next year. But that's it. I think it's a tough market. Carriers are having a hard time getting rate. I think that expertise and depth of knowledge in the space really make all the difference, in the ability to place these complex risks. And they really are complex. I mean, it's professional lines, right? So we're so I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. No, I completely agree. I think that it is I'm going to call it an unfortunate, somewhat soft market right now, but I think that too will change because it is a liability coverage. We talked a little bit earlier about some kind of liability touch-ups from carriers in their loss reserves from earlier years because of loss trends growing more so than was anticipated. So I think that that'll carry over into the professional line space, which is everything from cyber to the architects and engineers and the management liability you talked about, and then just E&O. As a casualty person myself, and that's really where my technical background is, I think there's going to continue to be a really specific delineation, continued delineation between professional liability and general liability. And there's more professional liability exposure out there for organizations than they may think. You don't need to be an accountant or a real estate agent or a lawyer or architect or some type of a quote unquote professional to have a professional exposure. I think a lot of folks do have professional exposure and they should certainly chat with their Burns and Wilcox representative to chat about that and see if we can help them. Of course, cyber, all of us have an exposure there, personally and professionally. So,
Yep.
Good. Well, I hope you get a good grade tonight at home, Doug.
So do
you'll
I.
have to let me know. Absolutely. So, a shout out to Melissa, if I recall correctly.
Very well. Thank you.
There you go. There you go. Kate, switching gears to you. So within personal lines, what we're currently seeing in the personal line space is that, what do we expect kind of more broadly beyond some of the things that we talked about, right? We spent a fair amount of time here talking about convective or, named hurricanes and the Atlantic hurricane season. And that just brings me immediately to flood and wind. What else is going on in the personal line space?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Paul. So we're still very much experiencing hard market conditions in the personal insurance market, and the trends are varying from a geographical standpoint. So over the last couple of years, like you said, we saw these triple-digit rate increases in these highly cat-exposed areas like western states with wildfire exposures and then coastal areas. So now what we're seeing are many carriers are getting to a place where they feel there's rate adequacy within their portfolio. So along with the lessening effects of inflation that we've seen over the last 6 months or so, we expect to be smaller rate increases and premium increases than what we've seen in the past. And especially with this 2023 quiet hurricane season, along with some legislative changes that we saw in Florida and Louisiana, we're even seeing a little bit more competition in those areas come into this marketplace. While conversely, in other parts of the country, we are seeing the underwriting appetite and carriers pull back from an appetite perspective because we saw these big convective storms and storm activities in the inland areas in the central parts of the country. So the NOAA, National Centers for Environmental Information, reported that there were 28 weather and climate related disasters in 2023, each of those costing over $1 billion in uninsured and insured losses. 17 of those 28 events were severe weather and hail related events across the parts of the country, mostly inland areas and central parts of the country. So it's very different than what we've typically seen in the high cat exposed areas where we've got the hurricane and the flooding and the wildfire exposures. So as a result, we're starting to see and expect to see carriers in these parts of the areas put a more emphasis on the age of the roof, the condition of the roof, whereas you typically saw that on the coast. They're looking at higher AOP deductibles. We're looking at higher wind deductibles. And we anticipate that this could be really an area of E&S growth and opportunity this year, which isn't really typical historically for non-cat exposures in the central part of the country. And I also just want to lastly add that while we talk about the hard property market, especially on the personal insurance side, there's still a lot being driven from the liability and excess liability market and a shift there. And it's been harder and harder to secure excess high liability personal limits. And this is mainly being driven still by large sum payouts and verdicts and juries that we're seeing, and the inability for those carriers to get adequate rate for those exposures. And so we're still seeing a tightening of the personal and excess liability market, very similar to the hard market, and expect to see that because carriers, again, are not be able to get adequate rate. So they're shifting, they're tightening their appetite. It's becoming harder and harder to secure those higher limits, or they're just leaving the space altogether.
Very interesting. As you were chatting about that, Kate, I'm thinking of a letter I received in the mail not too long ago from my personal lines carrier, indicating that they were going to be seeking a significant increase this year. I get it, I understand it, but it's tough stuff. The other thing, you mentioned convective storms. I've said this in the past, and I think it's worth repeating. I said earlier, I'm a casualty guy, I'm not a property guy, but I think every state is a cat state these days, right? It's not just with Louisiana with Bonnie and Florida and the coast and the wildfire out west, but some of these storms they were coming into places that we just unheard of in the past to have these type losses in. So all makes perfect sense. Thanks for kind of bringing the convective storm and other perils into the conversation. Bonnie, did you want to say something? I think I may have. No, you're good. Okay, cool. Well, it's your turn anyway on my list, so get your microphone ready. So again, I don't want to beat this property thing to death here, but we are on the cusp of some key dates coming up, right? Namely reinsurance renewal dates for carrier partners. So, Bonnie, having said that, again, this is your bread and butter down there in Louisiana. What are you hearing with respect to some of these important dates that are coming up on the, on the carriers, and what are your sources telling you?
Thank you, Paul. So just so everyone knows, reinsurance is when companies buy insurance to protect themselves and to get a spread of risk. So simply, it just means insuring again. A lot of reinsurance contracts come up January 1 and June 1. So before we go to June 1, which is coming up soon, let's look back in 22 and 23 for a minute real quick. 22 and 23 saw some really large increases in reinsurance costs. And now that seemed to be leveling out when we entered 2024. Companies in 22 and 23 were also taking a larger retention limit in some of their reinsurance contracts. So you had a combination of them retaining more of a risk plus paying pretty significant dollars to buy reinsurance. That seems to have leveled out, and the January 24 reinsurance process was a lot calmer than it has been. Contracts experienced a lower, smaller rate increase, and restrictions and conditions seem to ease up a little bit compared to prior years. So what about June 1st renewals? The word on the street of what I'm hearing is it's going to kind of be much of the same as the January 1, 2024 renewals. You might see flat to single digit rate increases in reinsurance. There could be more capacity because some carriers might be willing to put some more capacity out there, and they probably won't have to push for as big a rate increases. So I think it's going to be a lot calmer, like the January 24 season when we come up to June. I also think that a lot of reinsurers made money in 2023, except maybe for those that were involved in some of the areas where we saw those convective storms hit, as Kate mentioned, and as you mentioned. Now, if you're in a cat area, could be higher than a single digit increase. It's just gonna depend on prior experience. That's kind of what I'm hearing on the reinsurance front.
Well, we appreciate your insights, and I'm sure your sources are probably some of the best in the industry. So we really appreciate that, Bonnie. The whole concept, I think it's starting to weave together here, right? We talked earlier about technology. We talked about, insurance to value. We talked about, all of these things, right? And profitability, they all kind of come together, right? And I think that the reinsurers are certainly using all of their technology to, get this right and pushing their carrier partners and then pushing folks like us to get the applications completed properly. Let's get the updates on the roofs. Let's get the updates on the building and the construction, occupancy, protection, and equipment that they're insuring. So I think better information, better technology is driving ultimately better results, and it's absolutely the right thing for the industry, which ultimately finds its way back to reinsurers. So thanks for that, Bonnie. Appreciate it. I guess, I don't want to be a cynic here, but that could all change real quickly, right? If we start getting into some of these, these storms, depending on where they hit and so forth, right? That could be a whole different conversation come January of 25. So we'll keep a real close eye on that. Doug, I'm going to circle back to you at this point, and just big picture E&S excess and surplus lines. We've seen tremendous growth over the last 4 or 5 years. And a lot of that is, you mentioned it earlier, right? The freedom of rate and form. Do you think that growth is going to continue within the commercial line space?
Paul, thank you for that. I do think it's going to continue to grow. I think that you mentioned freedom of rate and form. Admitted carriers continue to restrict some of their underwriting criteria and even capacity. I think we're going to have to go to the excess and surplus market to fill that. I think that there's changes in technology create new opportunities for E&S space. You know, we've got some programs here within Burns and Wilcox. Our cannabis program, that Jason Shirley runs, you know, relies heavily on ENS. You know, so you've got new market entries all the time. And I just think it's going to continue to, I'll say benefit, but grow the commercial ENS space. Yeah, feel very strong about that.
Yeah, I agree. Again, you know, I keep my ear close to the ground with our carrier partners, and what I'm, you know, seeing and hearing is that they really like the freedom of rate and form as well. So, you know, it takes a long time to get changes within the various states that we work with and so forth. So, I agree that it will clearly continue. Hey, thanks for the shout out to Jason and the new. You know, and what he's doing in our cannabis space. If I can just maybe just talk about that a little bit more, going off script here, we just launched for our viewers a new cannabis product through our RB Jones group that is a sister company of Burns and Wilcox, and they can provide various coverage for the transportation and the cargo of cannabis and related products. So if you have any clients that are transporting cannabis and related products and they need some type of you know, kind of in-transit cargo first party cover, please reach out to our brethren at RB Jones for that. Kate, I'm going to circle back to you at this point. And you know, we've talked here a lot about the importance of the industry, seatbelts on as we get ready for the 24 hurricane season. Anticipate a decent June 1st reinsurance renewal, as Bonnie said a couple of minutes ago. But despite all of that, you know, what advice do you have for our clients in navigating the personal lines marketplace? What do they really need to do to help us to help them?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, personal insurance, again, like Doug had mentioned, it's it's quickly growing in the E&S sector, in the excess and surplus lines space. And I would encourage retail agents to lean into placing business in the excess and surplus lines market, regardless of where you sit, because as we've demonstrated, it doesn't really matter anymore. There is a cat and non-cat area. There's going to be a demand no matter where you write business. And because, like Doug had mentioned, the ability for the flexibility of forms and the creativity and underwriting with sublimits and exclusions and the ability to apply appropriate rates and deductibles is all available on the excess and surplus lines paper. There's just this big push in the personal insurance space to excess and surplus lines. So agents should be partnering with a wholesaler that's willing to help them find creative ways to find a solution to insure their clients' hard to place risk. They should be working with a partner that can provide guidance and expertise so that they can work together to determine what the best coverage options are for their clients, because every exposure is unique. It may look a little bit different, and there's always an end goal depending on the client's depending on the client's property and what they're looking for. And then based on these current market conditions, I always like to remind retailers that it's really important to educate the clients on what's going on with this hard market, because now more than ever, it's so important that the clients protect themselves and their properties. And I think it's no longer just the simple expectation that we maintain our homes and we protect them, because that's now we're looking for people to go above and beyond the expectation to help protect their homes and do things and install materials like wildfire resistive materials in high wildfire areas and wind mitigation materials in coastal areas to really truly protect their homes and go above and beyond what's potentially as building codes or as stated county codes. They should be doing more to really help themselves in this type of market. They can also do things like automatic water shut-off devices and even just proactively replacing your roof when you know that it's deteriorating and it's getting old, right? Versus relying on your insurance carrier and a storm to come through and the insurance to be able to replace your roof. Those are all simple things that clients can do to really help minimize the impact that they may experience in this hard market as well. So I think that's very important for retailers and working with clients.
Yeah, sure. So risk mitigation. I'm kind of chuckling to myself here, Kate. You kind of caught the insurance guy here without a automatic water shutoff at his residence. Probably about 12 or 15 years ago. I remember like it was yesterday. I woke up for work one morning and knew something was wrong, and then let's just put it this way, I was on the phone with my insurance carrier within a few minutes after I shut off the water. So thanks for that reminder. It can happen to all of us, including the insurance professionals on the call today. Bonnie, what advice do you have for our clients and words of wisdom on the commercial side?
Really not much different than what Kate's handed out on the personal line side. You know, if you have an automatic sprinkler system and you have a freeze that's coming up, make sure you shut it off or drain your pipes. Similar things like that on the commercial side to try to prevent a loss. You know, a sprinkler system isn't going to stop a fire from occurring, but it's going to lessen the amount of damage for it. So a lot of the same things that Kate mentioned on the personal line side. Perfect.
Thanks, Bonnie. Hey, Doug, we have the unique opportunity to have you on the call today as I guess the newest associate of the organization on the call here today. But prior to joining us, I guess it's coming up on a year now, Doug, but prior to joining us, you were on the carrier side. You were on the other side of the equation here. So, you know, if you were to put your carrier hat back on for a moment, would you have any different advice or ideas or thoughts?
You know, Kate and Bonnie were spot on with their suggestions. You know, I think the other area, and I could easily sit here and say, you know, make sure you have the nicest applications, submit the nicest applications, make sure your applications float to the top. When I think about our underwriter friends at the E&S carriers, they've been inundated with submissions over the last few years. We're talking about how much this space has grown. You know, just to shout out to them, they're working their tails off trying to get through all these submissions. You know, it's our job to try and give them the best submissions possible, but it's not just about the applications and the submissions. You know, there's a practice that takes place called blocking the market. You know, those underwriters want to know if you haven't placed a piece of business with them for a while, why are they going to look at your application? Why are they going to look at your piece of business? So there's a relationship aspect of it. You know, we need to be cognizant of the underwriters as well. I mean, they want to place the business. So, you know, if we've been, you know, doing nothing but blocking business for them for a while, then, you know, they're not going to look to us or think that our submission is a live submission, and they're going to look to place that business elsewhere. So, you know, it's really, you know, being in contact, communicate with your markets, you know, let them know, pick up the phone, say, hey, you know, maybe the last one wasn't real, but this one is. So, you know, give me a shot on these and, you know, advocate for your clients.
Yeah, you know, we've talked a lot about quality submissions, quality applications, but and that will certainly continue. I often use the term bandwidth. We, as a wholesale broker, are competing for the bandwidth of all of the carriers that we work with on each and every submission that we send to them. So if we want to get, you know, proper, you know, space there, it needs to be a quality submission and all of that. But, you know, you hit the nail on the head, Doug, and that is relationships. Hey, I've been in the business now over 35 years, and I'm still just amazed how I'm just still meeting new people and calling on old friends, and you know, relationships are so vital. I'm out in Farmington Hills at our headquarters this week, and as I was boarding the plane yesterday in the New York area, lo and behold, I saw a colleague walk up, and he was getting on the same flight. And it was really kind of cool, right? You just, you know, you go to conferences, you expect to see the same people, but not a random flight. So you develop some just really strong relationships over time, and it's really important. Hey, last thing here is we got like 2 minutes left. I just want to kind of chat real quickly about talent. You know, you know, what do you guys have to say about that with respect to the significant, you know, kind of, there's you know, a lot of folks that are kind of moving on from the industry, retiring and so forth and so on. What are you thinking with respect to kind of bringing some new talent into the industry? Bonnie, do you have any thoughts on that?
Sure, Paul, I have a couple of comments I can make on bringing in new talent. You know, as leaders in the company, you know, part of our responsibilities is to be able to perpetuate and share our knowledge. We are attending career fairs throughout the whole country, trying to identify talent, especially focusing in on some universities and colleges that might have risk management programs. That's kind of on the outside. On the inside, we have a producer fast track program that we have developed to identify producers that we think that we can help position them to be large producers in a short period of time. And we're doing, lots of things internally and externally, and those are just two that I'd like to throw out.
Yeah, and hey, I'm the proud father of someone that's in the industry, so I think it's there's a lot of like similar names in the industry and generations and so forth. Doug mentioned he has a spouse in the industry, so it's there's a lot of that out there, and it's worked out really well. So, okay, I'm showing 2:15 Eastern time. That brings us to our 45-minute conclusion. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to our clients and guests that attended today's webinar. I saw a question pop up in the box. It is available via it's GoToWebinar. Certainly we can get you the link to it if you didn't see the beginning of it or you'd like to share it with someone else. We can get that to you. And then finally, again, be on the lookout. Next week, we should have our written report available where we will go into even greater depth on other lines of business with other subject matter experts throughout the entire organization, talking about our opinion on the state of the market right now in the E&S property casualty, personal and commercial space. So thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your afternoon, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.